iQOO is a sub-branded company of Vivo which was founded at the start of 2019 and was initially meant to be Vivo's gaming mobile division. Not even 2 years down the line, Vivo released the iQOO 5 and 5 Pro, which shifted the gaming appeal to a racing car aesthetic with their very first BMW Motorsport branded smartphone. Just a few months later, the iQOO 7 landed with the absence of a Pro model, which received an iterative upgrade to the iQOO 5, but more noticeably introduced Vivo's new OriginOS software skin, which naturally replaced FunTouch OS. It's now been 8 months since the iQOO 7 launched in China, and Vivo have presented us with this, the Vivo iQOO 8 Pro, a massive leap forward for the smartphone industry. Not only does the iQOO 8 Pro incorporate the same 5-axis gimbal stabilized camera we've seen in recent Vivo X series devices, but it's the world's first smartphone to use Samsung's latest E5 OLED display, and under that display sits the very first mass-produced Qualcomm 3D Sonic Max ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, which is not only the largest smartphone fingerprint sensor on the planet, but the fastest one too. This is TechNick, and I'm extremely excited to test out all of this new smartphone tech in this unboxing and initial review of the iQOO 8 Pro. The iQOO 8 comes in 2 different color variants. We get the Track Black Edition and Legendary White Edition. I've purchased the Track Black Edition this time around, since the iQOO 7 I had was indeed the white BMW edition. This is actually a carbon fiber vegan leather finish at the back. The white version is actually sandstone, which is also pretty cool in its own. We have a black silicone case in the box over here. You see the slogan for BMW Motorsports at the bottom of the cover over there, but peeling off that cover, things look a lot classier. I really do like this vegan leather finish, which has a carbon fiber texture and look to it, and really feels fantastic to hold, with quite a bit of fair grip at the back there compared to your regular glass finished phones. We have a 4500 milliamp hour battery under the hood with 120 watt fast charging, 50 watt wireless charging, a Snapdragon 888 Plus 5G CPU run on 5nm tech, Gorilla Glass 6 front, aluminum frame, vegan leather back, or of course the sandstone back if you do go with the white version. It is quite thick at 9.19mm thick, and the black version is slightly lighter than the white version, weighing in at just 202.5 grams. At the back of the iQOO 8 Pro sits a 14mm ultra-wide sensor, which is indeed a 48 megapixel IMX 598 camera, a 23mm main sensor, which is a 50 megapixel IMX 766V. The V stands for Vivo, which is actually a custom-made Sony sensor for this phone specifically. Of course, it also has gimbal stabilization, as it says at the bottom of the camera module. And last but not least, completing the trio is the 60mm telephoto. They call it a portrait telephoto since the optical zoom only reaches a max of 2.5 times. And when comparing the iQOO 8 Pro in the middle to the Oppo Find X3 Pro on the left and S21 Ultra on the right hand side, when it comes to an ultra wide shot, the iQOO 8 Pro does quite a good job actually. It's not as wide as the other two, though it does have a much better depth perception thanks to brightening up the shot a lot more than the other two, which is actually something I would never thought I'd say, where iQOO is doing a slightly better job than Samsung over here. When it comes to taking a snap with the main sensor without pixel binning over here, the iQOO 8 Pro and Oppo Find X3 Pro are using the exact same Sony IMX 766 main sensor, apart from the V standing for Vivo, which is seen on the iQOO 8 Pro, which is actually a custom-made sensor, as I said earlier. And yes, the iQOO 8 Pro does look slightly better than the Oppo, but I cannot say that it looks better than the Samsung 108 megapixel ISOCELL HM3 sensor, which looks a tad better than the Oppo and iQOOs. When taking all of these main sensors and binning them down, 4:1 pixel binned on the Oppo and iQOO down to 12.5 megapixels, and 9:1 super pixel binning on the Galaxy S21 Ultra from 108 to 12 megapixels, all of them look pretty much similar to their previous results, which actually seem to handle light slightly better when indoors, as you can see over here. Once again, the Samsung slightly coming out on top, showing a tad more bit of detail, but the iQOO and Oppo Find X3 Pro are not too far behind. The first phone to kick in with optical zoom here is the Oppo, since it has the lowest 2x optical zoom using its 13 megapixel telephoto sensor. The two on the right haven't kicked in their telephoto sensors yet, since their optical zoom levels are slightly higher than that of the Oppo at 2.5 times on the iQOO and and 3 times on the Samsung. So they're just sitting at digital zoom, and comparing the digital zoom on the iQOO and Samsung to the optical zoom on the Oppo, you can truly see that optical zoom is definitely the way to go. And of course, the iQOO 8 Pro does also have optical zoom, and it only kicks in at 2.5 times and has a higher megapixel count of 16 megapixels when using its telephoto lens. The Oppo is still using its telephoto lens, but is now sitting at digital zoom since it surpassed its 2 times optical zoom level, and the Samsung is sitting at digital zoom using the main sensor still since its optical zoom has not yet kicked in using its telephoto lens, meaning that the best one here should be the iQOO 8 Pro, and so far it looks that way to me. And now the Samsung's telephoto lens has kicked in with 3 times optical zoom over here. The other two are still using their telephoto sensors, but once again sitting at digital zoom, meaning that the Samsung should look better. And though the Samsung does show a tad more detail over here, I can't say it looks much better than the iQOO 8 Pros, which actually looks a hell of a lot better than the Oppo Find X3 Pro's shots over here. And the iQOO 8 tends to warm up the shot a little, giving it a bit of a homey feel. When it comes to 5 times zoom over here, all of them just using hybrid zoom, but still sticking to their telephoto sensors over here. This is now not optical on any of them, and I think that the digital zoom on the Samsung is actually doing a better job than the two on the left. As soon as we hit to 10 times zoom over here, Samsung swoops in to take the lead once again, since it is fitted with a second telephoto lens, and this time it is actually a periscope lens, and it is of course 10 megapixels and reaches up to 10 times optical zoom. You can definitely see that the level of detail is a lot higher on the Samsung shots as opposed to the 10 times digital zoom shots on the Oppo and iQOO side on the left hand side. The Oppo looks closer to the Samsung, with the iQOO lagging behind a bit. And when it comes to taking a shot slightly closer to a subject using the main cameras over here for a natural bokeh effect in the background, I think that all of them are pretty much on par with each other. Of course, they also all sport 4K 60 frames per second video, and you can definitely see the gimbal working there on the iQOO 8 Pro, which makes things seem a tad more smooth compared to the other two devices. There is the gimbal itself. It is, of course, a 5-axis gimbal stabilizer. And when you turn it on, you can actually see the little camera moving inside there right at the top if you've missed it, which is just so darn rewarding. Moving on from that camera and that stunning back carbon fiber finish, we have a power button on the left-hand side, which is indeed textured with an orange accent. We have a dual SIM 5G tray over here. Unfortunately, no expandable storage, but there is a water-resistant seal. Very strange there. USB Type-C 2.0 speeds. We do have dual stereo speakers, one at the bottom and one in the top earpiece with a super audio. And of course, we have a selfie camera as well, 16 megapixels with an aperture of f2.4. And comparing the selfies to the Oppo on the left and Samsung on the right, the iQOO actually doesn't do a half bad job, but I do feel like the insane amount of detail that you're seeing on the S21 Ultra truly does outdo the other two. But when it comes to taking a portrait shot, the Samsung still has that crazy level of detail, but fails in the edge detection front, while the iQOO and Oppo have no problems giving you pinpoint edge detection around my head, separating the foreground from the background. The selfie camera is a selfie camera and it does the job pretty well, but what about turning on the phone and getting into the nitty-gritty tech features that are just having me buzz all over the show? We do have a Qualcomm 3D Sonic Max fingerprint sensor over here. It is ultrasonic. Look how massive that thing is. You can actually fit 2 fingers in here, which I'll test out in my full review. One for you and say one for your kids so that you can authorize payments, I guess. It is absolutely massive and is 17 times bigger than the Gen 1 ultrasonic and 9 times bigger than the Gen 2 ultrasonic. Of course, you can change the icon patterns as well as the animation styles, though not a huge variety. I'm sure that will change going forward. The Ultrasonic 3D Max is 20 by 30 millimeters in surface area, which is a hell of a lot larger than the others and just takes 0.2 seconds to unlock, which is a hell of a lot quicker than the previous generations as well. Of course, we are skinned with OriginOS over Android 11 over here, and it looks, I guess you could kind of say, roughly similar to iOS mixed up with an Android experience over here. A lot of similarities throwing around over here, but if you do prefer the average Android style, going back to FunTouch OS, which you've seen on previous Vivo phones, you can actually switch to it on the fly using a mood cube and jumping through a parallel world and back to OriginOS, which is great. Yes, of course, there is Google, and yes, the Play Store does work even with the Chinese variant that I have over here. We are welcome to a Snapdragon 888 Plus CPU, which has a max clock speed of 3 GHz and is supposedly 20% more powerful than the vanilla Snapdragon 888. And while I only picked up the 8GB of RAM variants of the device, we can use 4GB extended RAM over here, bringing up the total to 12 gigs. But you've got to bear in mind that extended RAM is actually using your phone's UFS 3.1 storage instead of your LPDDR5 RAM speed, and taking those hardware specs and throwing them into AnTuTu benchmark version 9.1.2 over here, the iQOO 8 Pro has truly flown here with a score of 837,407 points, which is quite a bit ahead of the Mix 4 and Magic 3 Pro Plus using the exact same chipset. The screen is of course seeing a bump up here to 1440p resolution, which is WQHD plus, and that is not the only thing that has changed. We're now seeing a larger 6.78 inch LTPO OLED 20:9 aspect ratio curved display, and we do have an E5 panel over here, which is made by Samsung, the first phone in the world to house it, which is apparently 25% more efficient than the Samsung E4, which we saw earlier on this year. It has a pixels per inch of 517, and it has 1.07 billion colors, HDR10 plus supports 112% DCI-P3 and 140% sRGB color gamut rating with 1500 nits of peak brightness. And thanks to that LTPO display, we can vary our refresh rate from 1 to 120 Hz, and we also get kitted with 300 Hz touch sampling rate, which is no wonder why it broke 14 records on DisplayMate. The iQOO 8 Pro is a phenomenal phone to say the least. That crispy clear display on the front, as well as that insane fingerprint sensor and that more than capable camera system on the back with gimbal stabilization, has really got me excited for the full review, which you guys certainly need to stay tuned for. So make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so that you are notified as soon as my full review drops, which should be in the next few weeks. This is TechNick, and I'll catch you in the next one.